Well, buddy, I'm going to go ahead and get started and just kind of introduce you.
Josh Lee.
How you guys doing?
There's my business partner, Chris. Josh Lee is actually one of my entrepreneur buddies here in Austin. He may be a good person for you to have some conversation with. Hey, Josh, maybe a good idea for you to connect with the doc. There may be some things that y'all can do together. Josh has a data mining company.
Nice.
So he has all kinds of stuff. He actually has a Monsterpreneur is another one of his deals here in Austin, but he does a lot of stuff that's connected with some really amazing people. So yeah, for sure. So let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I want to welcome everybody on, and for you guys that haven't been on Blab before, Brian and I met what's been a few weeks back now, right? Brian, on a Blab that you were doing. I kind of jumped in, and it really turned into a pretty cool friendship. We realized we were kind of doing the same thing, and we wanted to hook up and see if we couldn't distribute some great information out there. So what we want to talk about tonight, I thought it'd be great that we could discuss a little bit about hormones and the role they play in your health and happiness. And Brian, I just, talking about your story a bit here, I love it when I read through like your history, man. You've been in the wellness industry since you're like, it said, what, 5 years old or something? 6
Close,
years old?
7.
Yeah, you're working out with your dad. Said you had your first gold gym membership at what, fifth grade or something like that?
5th grade, I had my first World's Gym membership. So yeah, I got started early.
That's awesome, man. So so Brian's out in Austin, Texas, just rocking the world and teaching a lot of the same principles we do about whole food nutrition and balance in life and health and things of that nature. So we thought we'd get together, just share some information tonight about hormones. I've been in the health industry 25 years now. I've been doing this for about 25 years. So what we want to share with you guys tonight is a little bit, basically about hormones, how they affect your body and things like that. So if we start off, Brian, maybe, we can just start talking about the role of hormones and what hormones do, the fact that they're chemical messengers in the body and how important they are for our system to work properly. So.
Yeah, I can tell you from my own personal experience that my hormones have changed from 22 to 25 to 30 to 37. And as I have aged gracefully, still going to the doctor and getting your hormones checked is a must, because you will perform at about 30% of your capacity depending upon where your hormones are functioning at. And hormones can definitely be one of the major roles that affect your stress, affect your peace of mind, affect your body's ability to produce the results. Because obviously, being in the wellness industry, and the doc too could probably add to this, is that we all desire to look and feel great until it's time for us to go to our graduation, so to speak. And our hormones can play a massive role in that. And I know the doc will add some stuff to it. So. For sure.
Yeah. And basically, I think one of the basic ideas that people need to understand, I think there's a lot of confusion about what hormones are. Hormones are just chemicals that are, if you think of hormone, it really comes from the Greek word, which is messenger. And they're messengers that tell cells how to activate and what to do and how the body functions. And the most important part about that is that they need to be in balance. And I think what we're seeing more and more of in our society, because of the so-called food-like substances and a lot of these non-traditional foods and chemically enhanced foods and genetically modified foods, we're seeing a lot of interruption to people's hormonal balance. And as a result of that, they're experiencing a variety of different symptoms, whether it be lethargy or tiredness, or like you said, early aging, or just not feeling well. And we've been told that we're just going to have to learn to accept that. And that's not the truth. There's some things that we can do and that you can do on a daily basis that will definitely help how hormones function in your body.
Hey, Doc, give us some ideas on some things that you instruct people to do in your clinic with your practice, on things they can do as a lifestyle, as food, as water, things that they can do to improve their hormone function. What are some advice that you share with people?
Absolutely. One of the things is eat more consistently to maintain your blood sugar levels, because that will really help balance your insulin levels out in your body, your cortisol, your stress levels, including protein at every meal. Very, very important. eating a more variety or color of different types of vegetables and fruits, and exercise. And a biggie also is getting into something that they can manage or limit their stress with, whether that be meditation or whether it be something like yoga or, anything, whether it be walking or some type of exercise where you can decrease those stress levels, will help tremendously in balancing the hormones. And then being aware really of the sensitivities that you may have with different types of foods, because some folks can tolerate different foods better than others. And, nowadays we see a lot in our practice of gluten sensitivity, and we see soy sensitivities and dairy sensitivities and things of that nature. So those are some real basic things that we can do to begin to balance and manage hormones a bit.
So, hey, Doc, what has your experience been with phytoestrogens?
I'm sorry?
Phytoestrogens. How have you seen those come into play in your practice with your clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. Drastically, because what we're seeing now, and I think the part about that, Brian, is that they're hidden in so many things that people don't realize it. So we're going to, our clients are going to the store and they're trying to buy proper foods and they're trying to feed themselves right, and they don't realize that a lot of these phytoestrogens and these fake hormones basically are stimulating and triggering the body and creating a lot of different responses. And so we see it with obesity. We see it with a difficult time losing weight. We see it with, and I don't know if you've noticed this, back when I went to school, it was very uncommon to see kids in junior high that were like, massive in size and overweight. And now we see, these young girls with fully developed bodies, in 6th, 7th grade. And we see these, we have a young boy that lives down the road from us, the same age as my son, and junior high, he's over 200 and some pounds. 6'2", 6'3", 200 and some pounds. Wow. And he's just consuming a lot of these growth hormones and estrogens and things of that nature. So,
it's interesting you say that. Our daughter's 8, and let's see if I can get the echo out. See if that's better. And I have noticed also in her martial arts practices and her dance practices, I can literally tell which ones are eating dairy and which ones are not eating dairy, because of the displacement of body fat, different areas of their body, how their bodies are maturing. Just, you can tell where dairy's been involved in, and dairy is a big deal. And I believe personally, and the doc would probably agree with this, is that we've been lied to as a population for many people, and most, I wouldn't say most importantly, and the dairy industry has been one of those big ones, because dairy does not produce strong bones. It is the direct opposite of that due to the acidic nature of dairy. So acidic meaning like we have a constant alkaline acidic balance that our body is trying to balance out. And when we have processed foods, we have dairy, we have sodas, refined sugars, alcohol, anything of that nature creates acid in our body. And our body's extremely intelligent, thank God. And what happens is our body starts to release PTH, which is parathyroid hormone, which starts to release calcium in our bloodstream to buffer that acid. Now that's great. The only issue is that if that calcium is not pushed out of our arteries, it starts to calcify. So then we start to have heart disease scenarios, plaque buildup, cholesterol, blood pressure issues, and then you start to go down the heart disease roll, and it's never explained like that. It's explained that you should never go a day without having dairy and get your milk mustache. Yeah. I'm inviting you today, and I'm challenging you today to stop drinking milk and to drink almond milk or coconut milk. They have much more superior nutrient profiles that can dramatically affect how you're showing up. And for me, I grew up drinking milk. I used to drink a gallon of milk a day like it was cool. And I went and had allergy shots every week from my doctor, who had no freaking clue of saying, hey, you should stop drinking dairy. I drank dairy until my 20s. And I finally read the book or got a hold of a guy that actually told me about Eat Right for Your Blood Type. I said, I've been in the fitness industry a long time. Who is this guy to tell me what I should be doing? I had my knuckleheaded sense on, and I actually took his advice. And I said, well, what if he's actually giving me some truth? What do I have to lose by trying it out? I dropped my dairy, and I'll be honest with you, man, all my allergy issues, a lot of them went by the wayside, and I felt amazingly better due to I had much better breathing capacity. I wasn't blocked up. I wasn't congested. all of that stuff. So if you're drinking milk, my challenge to you is to drink almond milk or coconut milk and see how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, the big thing with that, and another great a great one for that is Milk the Deadly Poison. That was a book that changed my life also. I mean, that's a great resource for that. If you think about it, that's such a misnomer, because, and I hear physicians sometimes say, well, you don't need to drink milk because it's not high in calcium. And that's not true. Dairy is high in calcium, but we can't absorb it very well. The type of calcium that's in there, we need a real low pH, and we need an acidic pH in the stomach to be able to break it down. And a vegetable source of calcium, something from like dark green leafies, is where you're going to see that nice calcium be absorbed into the system. I think the whole problem is cattle were never meant to eat what they're eating right now. They were meant to, if you look at vitamin D and you look at calcium coming from the soil or ground, and D coming from the sunshine, and cows were meant to eat grass, and so as they feed on grass, as they feed on grass and start to eat these minerals and nutrients soil, then that's where we start to absorb it into our system. So, and I think what we're seeing now is dairy produced on such a mass level that we're seeing massive amounts of growth hormone. We're seeing massive amounts of artificial types of foods that these cows are eating, and then all of a sudden we're drinking this reproductive juice from these animals and thinking we're going to increase our calcium levels. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, and one of the big things to add to that is it's really the silica that's responsible for bone density.
Yeah.
It's not the calcium. So if you're really looking to maximize your bone density, which when you're talking hormones, that's a big deal. When we start talking for female specific, as our estrogen levels get lower, our ability to uptake zinc and important minerals for bone density and hormone enhancement is it's inhibited. If you're really looking to increase your bone density, you can go get some stuff called horsetail, which is the highest source of silica on the planet, that can make a massive difference. And literally, if you have fractures or broken bones, you can literally make a probably half to a third faster growth and replenishing process with horsetail versus calcium. So that's definitely something to check out if you're having those type of issues.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So Doc, hey, what are some symptoms that for our ladies and for our men both in your practice, what have you noticed people coming in that have been experiencing symptoms so that we could potentially provide some value to some people that are listening?
Well, I think the big one's lethargy and tiredness. I mean, we see a tremendous amount of people with fatigue. They don't feel like they're functioning well. They're in a mental fog. They can't think real well. Their joints are hurting. They're achy. They're tired. They're sore. The depression, absolutely unreal when we start to see hormonal balance take place. And then the biggie, of course, which is a huge buzz all around the nation, is weight gain. Why can't I lose weight? I've tried every diet in the world. I've tried every fad in the world. I'm exercising like crazy, and I still can't seem to drop this weight. And so, those are biggies that we see across in both genders, male and female. Now, with the guys, the biggie, and I know if you've watched any kind of TV whatsoever, you've seen massive amounts of ads for low testosterone.
Yeah.
Erectile dysfunction, low testosterone. And this is all hormonal balance coming to play or coming to fruition now from years of what we've been doing to ourselves by the way we've been eating, the foods we've been eating. So. Yeah.
One of the big things too is we'll talk about phytoestrogens for a second, and if just to explain the term phytoestrogen, a phytoestrogen is found in plastics or xenoestrogens, and they are thousands of times stronger than the normal estrogen that is naturally produced in our cells, which means then you start getting into epigenetics, which is above the genes. And that's when people come to me, they're like, man, I can't lose weight, I can't lose body fat. And let me just tell you, as a professional, and my business partner Chris is on the line too, I've been 250 3 different times. In this last year alone, I have been massively stuck measuring out 90% of my meals, doing activity 6 days a week, like as a professional, still having issues. And what happened was I went to see my naturopath, and I actually had formaldehyde in my cells from some of the artificial sweeteners that was showing up in some of my food. So a lot of the chemicals that are coming down from our environment, that's sprayed on our food, that's basically coming in from places that we wouldn't really expect, can dramatically affect how our body uses energy from a mitochondria on a cell level to produce your weight loss or your body fat reduction or not. Some things you can really do now to start working with xenoestrogens is I have a BPA-free plastic that I drink out of, but I also have a glass bottle for my water so that I'm not getting plastics leached off into my water. So if you are drinking water, make sure you haven't left your bottle out in the sun to where it starts leaching all the plastics off in your water. Try to drink out of glass as much as possible, because if you're having hormonal issues and you notice that your body's not responding well, it's a good possibility you have some cellular toxicity going on that's inhibiting your body from being effective and highly functional like it's used and like it's designed to do.
Yeah, you know, and Brian, we should touch on that before we end up today about how do we get rid of some of this toxicity? How do we support the liver? You know, the liver's like an oil filter in your car. It's there to process and get rid of these things. And that would be a great thing to talk about. I noticed someone typed in over there, they're talking about stress level playing a big part. How does, you know, stress play such a big part? And Art Gilmore said, can we talk a little bit about cortisol and how cortisol comes into play when we're talking about the endocrine system and hormonal balance? So
yeah, the death hormone. Go ahead, Doc. Let's hear what you got. Let's hear some stuff.
Well, here's the deal. What we see with it, when you look at Henry Hauer, who was the endocrinologist that did most of the work on the endocrine system, and you look at the four, he described it as the four major players in the endocrine system, which would be the adrenal glands, the gonads, female or male reproductive tissue, the thyroid, and then the pituitary gland. And how I describe it to my clients, it's sort of like four legs on a table. If you've ever been to a restaurant and you sit at a table and it kind of wobbles back and forth, you know, it's still standing, but it's just not really a strong structure. And those four primary organs of the endocrine system can either stimulate or inhibit all the other processes and organs of that system. So the adrenal glands, the big producer of cortisol, what happens often with clients is we're put into a fight-flight situation. You know, whether you're the lion or the gazelle, you know, you're the gazelle, the lion's chasing, your cortisol levels go up, your stress levels goes up to give us that fight or flight to be able to get out of that situation. And then when the stress is removed, it should drop right back down again. But what happens with people, we're now in a society where we're not only burning the candle, you know, at both ends, but it's a 3-wick candle. So we got 6 wicks lit up here, man, and we're running out. We're constantly stressed. You know, we're working 2 jobs. We're you know, trying to get the kids to school, running them to activities after school. We're trying to balance our house and our career and everything else. And then the price of gas and money and all this stress goes on. And then what happens is you're constantly firing that adrenal system, and that increased cortisol over a period of time. You'll at first that person will get that high, and then they'll become depressed. Their cortisol levels will become depressed. And then what takes place is you go into fatigue or cortisol fatigue. And that's a tough one to get clients out of once they've reached that point. So,
yeah, you know, what's interesting is I'll share on this a little bit because I think it would be valuable. I know we've got some coaches and some people on here.
Yeah.
What I've experienced when you're talking cortisol and when you're talking adrenal issues, I would explore deep-seated grief. A good way to determine, this is all body language information I'm sharing with you now. A good way to determine whether you're functioning in fight or flight right now and any time during the day is to see where you're breathing from. If you're breathing from your chest, you're in fight or flight. The easiest and the fastest way for you to do, and what Chris and I talk about and what we really share information on, is on air, water, food, and consciousness, and mastering those. If you are looking to get into higher state of consciousness or thriving mindset, you immediately drop your breathing down into your diaphragm, and you will go from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system and automatically drop yourself into I am secure, I am thriving, I am loved, I am validated, those type of mindsets. So your nervous system is not firing on 100 miles an hour like you're being chased by a tiger. And I know that cortisol can definitely add. So if you're constantly amped up, cortisol is known as the death hormone. The more of it you have, the more stress you're having on your body. So using, like the doc said, yoga, using things that you can do to ground yourself. Like right now, I have a grounding mat underneath my feet. I have a EMF. Like, let me show you this since I'm not on my phone. I have it's something called a Q disc. It is on the back of my phone that takes all the electromagnetic frequencies when I'm on my phone, and it channels them into one harmonious energy signature, so my body's not constantly being bombarded. So if you have electromagnetic frequencies that you're around while you sleep or while you're working, big difference. I have one of these on my outside breaker box, and when my coach put it in there, literally it took me about 3 hours to balance back out from how different I felt because of the energy exchange and how that stuff wasn't bouncing off, just bombarding my system. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good. Just getting my mail, so hope there's not too much background noise. But the one thing that I will say is that we have to recognize, as far as Western medical systems are concerned, stress is related to every single disease. It can be the source of your disease. It can be an exacerbator of any disease. And you have to recognize what stress is, right? Stress is not just physical stress, right? Yeah. It's emotional stress. Cortisol, adrenaline is your short-term stressor, right? Cortisol is sort of your long-term stressor, which basically means, you're in fear of something for long periods of time, right? This can be from what you watch on television, what you watch on Facebook, what you put in your environment, what you're worried about or anxious about all the time. And these are all emotional states that make your stress worse. So you need to understand what those are and how you can improve your perspective and your state of being. And it's always emotional to fix cortisol levels, right? So don't try to fix it chemically. Get your emotional state of being in a better state of order in the way that you believe, and get out of fear, understand where the fear comes from and that it's not real. Anxiety is imagining a future state. You're not living in the present, you're living in a future state and imagining negative outcomes instead of positive outcomes. That's what anxiety is. And so anyway,
that's good.
My opinion of cortisol is get your emotional state of being in better order.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And one thing just to add to that is it's really important to ask yourself the question, what does this turn into? A lot of times we get into the daily grind of, man, I'm anxious, or I have fear, or I have sorrow, and all that's great, because if you're not being able to identify or name a thing, quote unquote, you just keep experiencing it without understanding how to change it. So when you say, oh, wow, what does this turn into? I notice I have fear because I'm breathing from my chest and my stomach is tight. Fear turns into my courage. Sorrow turns into my joy. Anger turns into my forgiveness. So when you understand those, you can implement those tools and immediately resurrect those patterns. And then your body's going to go like, all right, I will, or I'm seeing differently, or your foot's going to move forward, and your body language is going to confirm your victory of moving forward, which is amazing.
Chris said something that was spot on there. Especially in Western medicine, you look so quickly at saying, okay, this level's out. What can I do to decrease that level? If it's too high, or if it's low, what can I do to raise that level? And even clients will get into saying, what type of supplement can I take if my adrenals are weak? And if you don't remove that stress, just like Chris was talking about, it's just going to continue to fire and fire and fire. There's not a supplement in the world. It's not a pill, potion, or lotion that'll fix that. You have to become aware of yourself and your environment and how to remove that stress. And someone typed up there, it's something we teach. I think it was Char typed up there, that it is physical, it's chemical, and it's emotional. You've got to figure out which one it is. And there's so much of the chemical stress now that we don't even know that takes place because of some of the foods that are out there, and people that are, things are eating on a daily basis. Most people that walk in my front door, I don't know about you guys, but they're garbage cans with hairy lids. Synthetic stuff, and they wonder, why in the world is my body breaking down? Why don't I feel good anymore? So
hey, Doc, what are some things that you would encourage your people to do that have some type of chemical laden bodies going on? What are some things that you would encourage them to start implementing? And what are you drinking?
This is called Adrenal Booster, actually.
What is it? What's in there?
A little bit of Eleuthero and licorice.
Nice. Licorice, my favorite. A little testosterone booster and a little IBS help too.
There you go, man. Definitely so. So when your question again, when we're looking at like detox and getting rid of some of these chemicals in the body, what we do, and a big part in our office, is purification programs. And I've helped develop some of those programs for Standard Process, Whole Food Nutrition Company. And nice. And we look at, what the major factor is. Is it a blood sugar factor? Is it something like maybe female or male dominance, sympathetic type dominance? Are we dealing with digestive issues or whatever it may be? And we try to get them on a program that actually starts to support the liver, because the liver is a big player in getting this stuff out. And as you know, and we don't have to get in major detail about that whole P450 cytochrome detox, but how we describe it to people is the phase 1 of that is getting the garbage out of the cells, and phase 2 is making sure that we can conjugate those toxins that are in there by adding some methyl groups and methyl donors and sulfonication, and most of those things come from food that we're just not eating. I mean, it was part of our diet years ago, but it's not now, like Brussels sprouts and the Brachius group, the broccolis and the detoxifiers that we should be consuming, like kale and things of that nature.
Hey, I know my genetic code, I have a challenge / opportunity with methyl, being able to detoxify.
Mm-hmm.
How often have you found that with the people that are coming in? How have you noticed their detoxification mechanisms being impaired with environmental toxins and things of that nature? What's been your experience?
It's worse and worse. It gets worse and worse. We've never in our history, Brian, lived in such a toxic environment. I mean, there are more chemicals in our foods and like you said, in leaching out of our containers that hold our foods and the plastics and things that were around. And we have never in the history of man been in such a toxic environment. And it does shut these processes down. And you got to remember the organs of detoxification. I kind of said liver. It's not just the liver. We're looking at the skin. We're looking at the digestive system, the lymphatic system. And they're all play a role with each other in this detoxification process. So working with clients that may have an issue with methyl foods, thank goodness the body's smarter than we are. We're not as smart as we think we are. We've got all these backup systems that it realizes it can go through glucuronidation, or it might go through sulfonication or something like that to get these systems working properly. So,
yeah. So one of the things I'd like to say about that is one, the average American urinates 7 pesticides, right? And when we talk about the endocrine system, right, all of the endocrine glands require iodine. Right, and if you look at a chemical chart, there's what they call halogens, and so iodine, bromine, fluoride, and chlorine are all molecularly almost the exact same. And what happens is these other toxins, which are fluorine and chlorine in our water, bromine in a lot of like flour and wheat products, or also in our clothes, that these other halogens can be actually infecting our endocrine glands because the body thinks it's iodine, and then all of a sudden these glands are not functioning properly. They start getting nodules, which can lead to cancer and all types of other malfunctions of not properly functioning because they think they have molecularly what they need, and they don't, because we're putting the wrong molecules and chemistry into our systems.
Hey, Doc, how much do you think the emotional capacity has an effect on our body? Like, if out of 10 people, how many do you think it's emotionally induced issues that they're experiencing?
10.
I agree.
Yeah, 10. And that emotion might, it could be different types of emotions. It could be an overstimulation constantly, someone that's over happy, or someone could be dealing with depression or anxiety or abuse. Oftentimes, I tell you a story about someone without mentioning names there, but I had this beautiful lady in my practice that had went through a program with us, lost weight, was doing fantastic, and eventually kind of gained it back again. And she was getting ready for a wedding for her daughter, went through this program again, did great, kind of lost the weight, was looking fantastic. And then it came back on, and we had another discussion. I said, you know how to do this. We've been through it. This isn't rocket science we're talking about and everything. I said, there's got to be something else taking place. And as we began to talk about a little bit, she had some abuse as a child by a family member that because she was very attractive when she was young. So she gained weight to get away from that stressor. And so when that event came around and people were saying, oh, you're looking fantastic, you're losing weight, you're really looking good, it brought her right back to that same, that emotional state, which brought that same physical state of her gaining that weight right back on. Until she's able to work through that, we never did see that permanent weight loss happen with her. So emotions tie into it drastically.
Yeah, I completely agree, my friend. I mean, I 100% have experience, and Chris would agree. working with a lot of people, we've found that it's definitely emotion, the number one deal as to why people come down with certain things or start experiencing symptoms or, I definitely completely concur with that for sure. So, hey, what are some foods that you would recommend or some lifestyle habits that you would recommend to people to start building their hormones up, male and female both?
Well, we talked about it briefly there. I think proteins are very, very important. And I think one of the ones that are really missed, Brian, is good, healthy fats. Good fats don't make you fat. What's made America fat is when we stripped fat from the diet. You guys are younger than me. You might not even remember this. You guys are probably still you might not even been here when that happened, right?
But I've studied it.
There you go, right? So like the mid and late 70s, when we started stripping fats from things, and we came out with that big push with fat-free dressings and fat-free foods, we replaced everything with simple carbohydrates. Yep. It's the simple carbohydrates that have pushed the obesity issue, and people are scared to death to eat fat. So when you're building hormones, you need good quality fats, things like avocado, things like medium chain triglycerides like coconut oil.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, good cholesterol is part of the hormone creation process, right? If you don't have cholesterol, you actually are diminishing your ability to produce hormones to begin with. And that whole thing that happened in the 70s was really friggin' Nixon's fault, right? Back then they said, we need to stabilize the food industry, right? Because food prices actually back then became a voting deal, and they wanted to get that rid of it. And basically, we only knew a few things. We knew that cholesterol was linked to heart disease. We didn't even know multiple types of cholesterol, and we knew fat produced cholesterol. So we said, okay, we can want to stop heart disease. We'll eliminate fat from people's diets. We'll tell them it's bad for them. That should cut out the cholesterol, and that should eliminate heart disease. Well, what happened, right? Instead, what we did was we pulled the fat out of foods, so they all tasted bad. So we added more sugar into them. And it turns out now, with good science, we found out that sugar, specifically fructose, is one of the worst violators of high-density LDL or bad cholesterol. And so we took out good cholesterol, which fat produced, and put in more bad cholesterol, which sugar produces. And the disease has gone rampant, right? Heart disease is through the roof. And the other thing I'll say is what Brian was talking about earlier about milk and the calcium filling up in our arteries, right? 80% of people that have heart attacks have normal cholesterol, right? Cholesterol is not the violator. It's actually the calcification on the artery walls that the cholesterol gets caught on, which anybody with normal cholesterol can become a problem with. And so recognizing that soluble fiber and those things to be able to clean out that calcification is way more important than regulating your cholesterol. And statins are so bad for you. So if you need guidance on how to get off cholesterol medicine, please reach out.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, when I graduated school 25 years ago, normal cholesterol was 300. When the statins came out, they lowered that to 249. They said, that cholesterol was the issue. Well, everyone started taking the statins, which are just absolutely horrible, right? Yeah. So the cells went through the roof on that. They dropped it to 249. They still saw people dying of heart disease. So they even lowered it lower now. And I've got docs in our area that say, I've got people coming in and say, well, my doc said I don't need any cholesterol whatsoever. That's the dumbest thing in the world. We try to explain it like this. We say, look, cholesterol's there because of the problem. It's sort of like the volunteer fireman coming along to put the fire out. So you're killing the volunteer fireman that's really coming there to make the cortisone and to decrease some of the inflammation in the system. And it's amazing because if we clean people's diet up, get them off the simple carbohydrates, get them on a good program where they're supporting their liver, their cholesterol drops drastically. And these MDs around here are like, I don't know how you're doing that without medication or without the side effects of stiff joints, achiness, erectile dysfunction, all the other junk that happens from taking the statins. It's unreal.
So that's a good question. Gregory just asked something. That's the same thing I was going to ask you, Doc. He's talking about 80-80-10. What's your experience like out of 100% on a nutrient profile, like protein, carbs, and fats macros?
It depends.
What have you found to be most successful with people that are looking to drop body fat? I'm curious to hear what you got. You're curious to hear what your experience has been.
Well, I think one of the quickest way to drop body fat is high protein, high fat, lower cholesterol.
So what would you suggest? Would you suggest like 40% protein, 40% fat, 20% carbs, or what are you thinking?
You know, Chris, or Brian, I do it a little bit different. I do an RJL bioimpedance reading in my office, and I look at their percent body fat and what's going on. So we customize a program for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't think any of it's cookie cutter, but I think if you're given information for people, if you can teach them about basic foods, and basically what we do is this: you need a plant-based diet of low glycemic carbohydrates. You need to have good quality proteins in that diet, and you need to be eating good quality fats. Get rid of the junk. Get rid of the white flour. Get rid of the processed foods, and you'll see your body begin to stabilize or come back into normal realms. Then you can start to really look at that and say, okay, you know, how do I tweak that for that particular individual? Because I think if you make it too complicated, if you get everyone starting with counting calories and everything else, it's just not going to happen. You know, we kind of talked about that before, I think, on another blab. If people would just start looking at food as fuel, right? And if I'm leaving West Virginia to come and see you guys in Austin, Texas, I'm going to stop and fill my tank up. But if I'm just going to run down the road to the mall real quick, chances are I don't need a full tank of gas. But we do it wrong. You know, we go all day long, we skip breakfast, we grab some kind of junk for lunch, and then we come home after a day's work, and we sit down in front of the TV and we eat a massive amount of calories. We're filling the fuel tank up and we're not burning it. So the body's going to store it as the best source of energy it can, which is fat.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have been pondering this for quite some time, back when I was actually having a professional do my nutrition program about 5 or 6 years ago. My question to you is, and I would love to hear your input on, if you are, say for example, your meal is made up of protein for sure, but then you have a carbohydrate and a fat ingested at the same time, do you think your body's going to use the carb and store the fat, or do you think it'll use both? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
I think the body's smart enough to recognize what it is we have and what we do. I think we overthink it. And I also think that's why it's $1 billion industry. The more confused you make people, you're going to run them to everywhere. Yeah. You know, and we get calls daily about the next latest phase that's happening and going on out there, about a synthetic nutrient and how this particular synthetic nutrient is going to feed the system. Whether you believe it's God, which we do, or a grand overall designer, everything that we need was put here on the planet for us in the right proportion, in the right amount. But what we've done is we've complicated the crap out of it. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, we've created paralysis by analysis. People get so confused, they're like, you know what? I'm not doing anything. I don't know what to do. I'm so confused with it. So what we try to do is just bring a little bit of clarity to it. In a lot of situations, if you just quit doing the crap that's causing the problem and start doing eating, you know, I tell my people, if you want to be a real person, you got to eat real food. You know, don't look for it in a package or in a plant where it was made. Get out there and eat the real stuff. It's become more difficult because of and we could do a whole blab on the genetically modified products and how we're mass producing in agriculture right now. But the reality is we've got to begin to start looking at food as fuel and consuming the fuel when we need it and when we need to utilize it properly.
I agree completely. So what are some foods, like talking back on hormones? I know we kind of got off on a tangent and it was very good information. What are some foods that you would suggest to your female clients in the realms of increasing hormone production for them?
Again, fats. Fats is a huge one for us. I look at avocados, specifically avocados, olive oil, chia seed, any kind of good evening primrose oil, any kind of good quality fats, because most of the women that enter our office are fat starved.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys see that with the clients you work with, but they're fat starved. They're scared to death that fat's going to make them fat.
It's still
when they start consuming the media. I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's just still 1960s science that people believe.
Yeah. And so fats are a very, very important one. And then mixed dark greens. You know, dark green leafies and mixed vegetables with a variety of color is a great way to go. And then good sources of protein. But now protein, because I know you had a couple posts on there. I've kind of been following you a little bit. I know you had a friend visiting you talking about a vegetarian base or a more of a meat-based diet there.
Yep.
You can get proteins from vegetable sources. But what you can't get is a complete protein or protein profile. So in other words, proteins, as you guys know, are just amino acids, right? And so oftentimes what I see with my vegetarian, and again, where I'm at in West Virginia, we don't have people come in and say, well, I'm vegetarian, and what they really are is ho-ho-itarians or Twinkie-itarians.
Vegetarians.
I don't eat meat, right? So I'm a vegetarian, but I eat all this other crap, right? And what we try to explain to them is, look, you're just not getting that complete amino acid profile there. And so, and that's one of the things we can get from
I'm gonna borrow that one from you, Doc.
I found that when you're talking about vegetarian protein sources, right? You talk about like green leafy vegetables. Most of them are like 40% protein by weight, but most of it is not classified as protein because they actually don't have a complete protein profile, right? They have a variety of amino acids. And you can definitely eat a vegetarian, vegan lifestyle and get plenty of protein, but it's about spreading it out and eating a wide variety so you actually get a complete amino acid profile. And that's where they miss the boat, right? And that's what, like, Brian and I love to teach the power of smoothies, right? Because one, people don't eat enough raw food, right? And then two, people don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, right? So we can solve two problems at once by getting them to drink a smoothie. They'll take in what most people take in a week and one big old glass of raw fruits and vegetables. And there they can get not only a complete amino acid profile, but they can get nice rich fats, they can get good healthy carbohydrates, and they can get way more vitamins and minerals than they're probably going to get from a multivitamin, right? And a big glass. And so that's why we encourage that, right? Is because people are just missing the boat on eating what most people should be doing, which is going back to nature, right? And eating more whole foods.
So, hey, Doc, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on juicing versus blending.
Yeah, Brian, I do both. We have a Vitamix. We have a Vitamix at home. We have a Vitamix here in the office. I love it because of the fact you're getting the fiber in the food. You're also getting a lot of the nutrients. That sometimes in juicing, I think the only issue with juicing, and we juice daily. My wife does. I love juice. Beet juice is probably my favorite. We do a little bit of beet, a little bit of ginger, a little bit of lime or lemon in it. Beet is a wonderful for the betaine and very good for the liver. So it's a phenomenal juice for you. But one of the problems that you have with juices is that by removing that fiber, you're going to cause a quicker peak in those insulin levels because you're getting that dose of carbohydrate all at one time. And so you've got to be cautious in using it. I think juicing is great because you're going to get, as Chris said, you get in a glass what most folks aren't even consuming in a week. Yeah. But you've got to be cautious that we're not creating those big spikes in insulin, because if you really look at blood sugar issues, blood sugar is the culprit, but the problem's the insulin. Yeah. That high insulin over a long period of time is what creates that resistance. And, even that, since we're talking about hormones, I mean, there's a biggie, that whole insulin resistance that leads to diabetes and everything else. I lost my father to that. It's going to be 6 years here in November. And that's when I get real serious about teaching folks about diabetes, because I watched them put him in the hospital. He went through a surgery and he chose, I was his son. I wasn't his physician, and it's hard. You guys probably can attest to that. So I understand the world working with your family. Yeah. And so he chose to fight diabetes in a different way, which was to chase it with insulin. And his docs had him believe in that. Well, you don't really need to change your diet. If you eat a bunch of sweet stuff, take more insulin. If you eat less of it, then your sugar's down, then you can eat more sweet stuff. It eventually led to a situation where going through surgery, he ended up with an infection that wouldn't go away, but they put him right back in recovery room and started feeding him simple carbohydrates. And I said, look, if you've got to get rid of that, because there's no way his body's going to heal. And they didn't care. They said, we can control it with insulin. And then, I watched probably the most resilient man that I ever knew in my life. My dad never said no to anything, man. I tell you, my dad used to say stuff, guys, like Rome wasn't built in a day, but damn it, I wasn't the contractor. And he gave up. He quit. He said they lied to me, and he quit. And I watched that guy waste away to absolutely nothing because of misinformation. you know. Again, back to the juicing. I know we kind of got off there, but the only problem I see with the juicing is you've got to watch that you're not increasing those sugar levels too much. So
what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just gonna say he's absolutely right. You lose a lot of vitamins and minerals, and we already talked about how glucose is used by every cell in the body, but fructose isn't used by any cell. And so high amounts of fructose converting to high density LDL, but without the fiber from the fruits, then you're adding cholesterol with nothing to remove it. Plus you have the huge insulin spike. The fiber helps slow down that absorption of the sugar. And so, you know, and a lot of people do. A lot of people just use vegetables, and that's great. And, you know, when you're talking about like Gerson therapy, somebody fighting cancer where they're not really hungry or they can't take in a lot of nutrients, juicing can be way beneficial because you can get a lot of vitamins and minerals in a liquid form in which they can really take it, which a smoothie might inhibit or not get as concentrated. But once again, you lose so many vitamins and minerals in that fiber that to me it's wasteful almost to just juice.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Doc, and I'm going to see if I can word this properly and Chris can fill in the gaps. Have you ever watched the documentary called The Truth About Cancer?
Truthaboutcancer.org, actually.
Well, what they go through, it's actually a great documentary. It's probably 7 or 8 hours. I watched 7 hours of it one day. It's definitely a great resource. But one of the things they really talked about was how sugars, you know, how obviously cancer is a glucose metabolizer, an obligate glucose. I think it's obligate, whatever it is. But basically, cancer feeds off of sugar. And the thing that they were talking about is how Gerson therapy uses certain fruits, and the certain fruits that they use have a certain way that the energy, that the molecular, something about the energy, it spins a certain way so the cancer cells won't connect to it. But there's only certain fruits like apple, maybe carrot, and some berries that actually do that. And their other fruits spin the other way, which actually means that the cancer cell would actually attach to it to feed off of it. Do you have any information, or have you heard of that?
Left-handed amino acids versus right-handed amino acids. So like, a lot of natural sugars are all left spinning. So like when you see L-glutathione or L-acetyl-L-carnitine, right? L means left spinning, and that is more natural. Processed sugars and refined sugars, those are right spinning. And so they're trying to do a published study right now on proving that it's not just sugars that feed cancer, but specifically right spinning versus left spinning. Natural sugars might not feed cancer at all, but it can absorb the right spinning molecules, which are more processed sugars.
Yeah.
My understanding.
Yeah.
And it's thetruthAboutCancer.com. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I haven't seen that documentary, but I'll definitely look it up. But I agree with you on that. Yeah.
So, hey, what foods would you recommend for boosting hormone function for men and women both?
Are you asking me or Chris?
Yes, I'm asking you, Doc.
Well, I mean, we've already talked about it. I think fats are the most important part. Good, lean, quality proteins.
Right.
And you want to, and if I'm going to spend my bucks organically, if I'm going to spend my bucks on things, that's where I'm going to look at it. I want something grass-fed. I want to make sure that I'm staying away from added hormones to the meats. Because, guys, if you're buying commercially raised stuff, it's growth hormone and antibiotic like crazy. I know it because I've seen it firsthand. I have family members that are in that business, and I know how that works. So, you know, that's where I'd spend my quality money there. And then I would make sure, again, I love a plant-based, a good variety plant-based diet. The thing that we always tell folks is a 2-to-1 ratio. I try to twice as much vegetables as fruit, 2-to-1, and twice as much vegetables as a lean protein source. So it's a protein or a plant-based diet that we're primarily promoting with that.
Got it. You know, some things that we use for hormone boosting and the stuff that we're talking about relative today is oysters is your top zinc source. Pumpkin seeds is your second highest zinc source. What also works really well is using black sesame seeds. It's a great gene builder, which is hormones, but it's also great because of the high mineral content. So helping people with rheumatoid arthritis, with constipation. I mean, my teachers actually told us stories about how people's hair will go from gray back to normal colors because of the rich nutrient and vitamin and mineral content in black sesame seeds. So that's something we use to do a little hormone boosting too.
You know, another thing that you were saying is what is true with athletes, and athletes are generally the most studied people on earth because of performance enhancers, is often true for the general public, right? So like when we want to improve hormones, we recognize that athletes are zinc deficient, right? Because zinc is a precursor to both building testosterone and estrogen. And without zinc, it's very difficult for you to produce your hormones correctly. But magnesium is a huge one, right? And so 80% athletes are magnesium deficient because of how much they're processing and doing with their hormones. And so like things like Epsom salt bath can be amazing, right? Where your body can help just through your skin as a filter, can absorb the right amounts of magnesium and sodium that your body requires. Those are big things for hormones too. And for men, there's just so many different supplements you can take that are just good natural endocrine boosters, thyroid boosters, or metabolic boosters to help speed up your metabolism.
Yeah, and we use supplementation for that, definitely. So, I mean, you mentioned something there. Both you guys mentioned a little bit about, and Chris, I think specifically you were talking about athletes. As they sweat and tend to leach out more minerals, their requirement for minerals goes higher and higher. So if you have a person that's into exercising, and it amazes me that we'll get clients in that exercise like crazy. They're gym rats like crazy. They're on the trails all the time, but they're not doing any kind of supplementation whatsoever to replace what it is that they're leaching out or sweating out. So we do use mineral supplementation. A biggie when you're talking about foods with minerals, Brian, I like kelp. I think kelp is awesome, for mineral content.
Kelp is so good, so rich in iodine, especially, right? And once again, iodine deficiency is a huge deal when you're talking about endocrine glands.
Yeah.
I recommend kelp to a lot of people too. Very mineral rich.
You see Dr. Brownstein and some of his work with thyroid and what they've been able to reverse, even with weight loss. I've seen it where we'll just turn around and put someone on prolamine iodine or a good Iadamir or some type of iodine supplement, and it just kicks the endocrine system right back into gear again. That's a great point, Chris.
So is there a brand that you use?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris. That's all right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have seen a lot of people that were struggling with thyroid, and we put them on iodine supplement, and they actually detox and for 2 or 3 days. And I'm a firm believer there's other halogens, bromine, fluoride, chlorine, that are clogging up those endocrine glands. And when they put iodine in their system, it's pushing those others out, and they get a little toxicity. It's like a little lethargic 3-day binge where their body's deep purging toxins out of those glands that shouldn't have been there.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that early. It's competing on the receptor site for that, the iodine receptor sites. And you got to be cautious as a practitioner. You got to make sure you let those clients know ahead of time, hey, you're going to experience some of this stuff. Don't be surprised if you see your body going through these particular things. So yeah, our primary, Brian, I think you asked about supplements we use. There's great supplements all over the market out there. Our primary source that we use in my office is Standard Process, because it is a whole food nutrient company out of Palmyra, Wisconsin. They treat their supplements sort of like I do my clients. I can tell you the fields that their crops grown in. I can tell you the crop rotation that takes place all off of a lot number on their bodies or on the bottle. So we tend to use Standard Process as a go-to, but we use other lines in our office also. Bless you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I have a client call in a few minutes, gentlemen. You guys, appreciate you very much.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thanks for jumping on, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I got one coming up in a few minutes too. So how can people get a hold of you that are watching the replay, Doc?
Yeah, well, 2 things. Number one, you can hit us up at drjohnbennett.com, and that'll take you directly to our website, or on top of the screen up there at bodyworkswellness.com. I'll type them over in the side over there. And on our website, there's some valuable resources on there, some downloads, some free information. And I encourage you to just jump on and check it out. And see what's happening and see if there's some things that resonate and stick. I say that with every client. The first part of sitting down with the client is let's just have a conversation. Whether or not we should engage together in doing something, who knows? But let's start with a conversation and see where we need to go from there. So how about yourself, Brian?
Yeah, I'll punch it in there. Certified chiropractic assistant. Love seeing this on Blab. Awesome. Yeah, mine is, I'll put it on there. thinkgreatloseweight.com. So what should be our next topic of conversation, Doc?
You tell me what's a big one in your area?
You know, I think the big one, the elephant under the elephant in the room is mindset, but everybody likes to talk about weight loss, you know?
Well, let me say this, though, Brian. If you don't have the right, I think that'd be a great one.
Yeah.
Let's maybe talk about weight loss and mindset. Because if you don't have the right mindset, I don't care what kind of program you're on, you're not going to see results with weight loss.
I agree. I guess my question is Charles talking about flu shots? Are you talking about having people get a flu shot? Or what's your standpoint on that? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't get flu shots either. I haven't been sick in 20 some odd years, so I definitely do not tell people to get flu shots. That's the biggest freaking scam, one of them, on the planet. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. You know what's amazing, and you actually said this, Doc. I have had so many people that go into the hospital for something that come out with MRSA or some crazy stuff, like 90% of the people that I've had go into the hospital for something come out with something else.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of crazy.
It's a great place to get sick, Brian.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, man. I had a lady on here that I hopped on yesterday, a couple mornings ago, was doing an 11-hour blab on donations for cancer, and she's going to shave her head, and she wanted to donate some money. I'm like, hold on, what are you gathering money for, and what's this money going towards? Is it teaching them how to eat asparagus and avocado to detoxify their body, or are you dumping money into a system that's still feeding them sugar and candy bars and they have no hair? I was like, I cannot donate my dollars to something like that, but if you would like to donate some information, education to help them to eat, that would be amazing. I'm actually pretty decent acquaintances with Dr. Pont, which is the head children guy at Dell's. And that's amazing what they feed those people, the people in the children's unit at Dell's. They have Cokes and candy. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Nuts.
It's amazing, man.
Brian, I watched it with my dad. It was the saddest thing I ever saw. And, that's when I said enough's enough.
Yeah.
It's unreal. I see, I think it's Blonde 5882 on there said, I'm always told to get the flu shot. Here's what I tell you on that. And I'll tell you the same thing that I tell my clients. Educate yourself. Read up on what's in that flu shot and then ask yourself, does this make sense that I'm putting this stuff into my body? Yeah. What we do around this time of season is we educate our people how in the world to boost their immune system. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's a lowered immune system that allows the disease process to manifest.
Totally.
So if you increase your immunity, then you don't have to worry about the disease process. It's like the old adage of flies and garbage, Brian. You put a bunch of garbage in a room, eventually you're going to start to get flies. But if you put a bunch of flies in a room, I guarantee you're not going to see bags of garbage start to develop in there. The host environment that becomes low that creates the process. So you got to build that host environment up. So
really awesome. So hey, let's connect you and I and let's figure out what our next topic of conversation is going to be, and then we can continue on and take it from there.
Sounds great, buddy. I appreciate it. Listen, I really appreciate you jumping on with us tonight, and I really appreciate the feedback from some of the people and some of the questions that we had there. And I'd love to keep this going. I mean, Blab's been a great opportunity for us to share some information with people. So you and I'll connect here, and we'll see if we can't plan this next one within a week or so and keep this thing rolling, bud.
Awesome, brother. I love you, man. Have a good night. I'll talk to you soon,
here,
brother.
Man. Yeah. Have a great night. Thank you.